Hi, class. Welcome to week 3. Woo! I'm so glad you're all still with us. You're in it to win it with public speaking. First things first, I'm very pleased with the outcome of our quiz 1. For all of those who took the quiz last week, grades on the whole were very good. Give yourself a pat on the back if you got an A or a B. It's exactly where we want you to be. If you did not get an A or a B and you're not exactly sure why that didn't happen, send me an email and we'll set up a meeting where we can talk about how you studied and if we need to create some new strategies for you. So do that and we'll make sure we bring your quiz grades up. All right, this week we're jumping right into ethics in public speaking, and it's such a huge topic. Full courses, enormous books are written based just on ethics in public speaking. And we're putting it in one chapter because we have so many other things we want to get covered. If you're going to be a professional communicator, and for most people, their jobs will involve some level of communication, but if you're going to get into like marketing and public relations, politics, something where public speaking is an actual huge part of your job, ethics in public speaking is going to be big part of your life. I do public relations. I have to think about ethical issues all the time. So it's really important that we at least give this week some focus on ethics, and we're going to jump right in. Hopefully you've already read chapter 3. If you haven't, stop this video, read it right now. If you have, let's go right in, and you're going to see the first thing we're going to do is we're going to give you a break. I want you to watch a couple videos right off the bat. The first one is President Nixon. You might remember he was president 68 to 72. And the speech you're going to watch involves one of his Watergate speeches. And then you're going to watch a clip of a video. It's part of a 10-part series, if you can believe it, but I'm not making you watch all 10 parts. Don't worry. There's a clip of one of his videos. He was the former CEO of the Enron Corporation. And if you remember anything about corporate malfeasance in the 90s, you will have heard about Enron. If not, they are a very fascinating case study. There's actually a documentary of them called Enron, the Smartest Guys in the Room. I totally recommend you watch it. But for this part, I just want you to watch these clips and then come right back here to this video and we're going to talk about it. If you were an eager beaver and you've already watched these clips in anticipation of this video, just stick with us and we'll jump right in. But if you haven't, watch these videos and come back. And we're back. I hope you enjoyed watching them. I know some of the video is kind of squidgy looking. That's what happens when we have video that has been shot 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. But it's the content that we're mostly interested in. If you know these two men from history, you know they got caught up with some ethical issues, and these were speeches they gave to try to either separate themselves from the ethical issues or to try to not build so much trauma and trouble from the ethical issues they were already dealing with. For President Nixon, if you remember anything about the Watergate issue, basically people in the Republican Party had broken into Democratic Party headquarters in Washington trying to steal information, data that they could use against them in the upcoming re-election of President Nixon. Now, we know he didn't know it was going to happen, but he knew pretty quickly after it kind of got out into the public eye, he really did kind of know what happened. He knew everybody who was involved, and he knew the extent to which things happened with the Watergate break-in. Nonetheless, he made a few speeches to the public really trying to downplay his and his administration's role in the break-in. And so in this particular video, you're seeing he's really kind of separating himself. He's shocked. He's whatever. He is still studying. He's trying to learn exactly what happened. By this time, we all know, looking back on the information that has been gathered and researched since then, he knew at this full point exactly what was happening, but he was trying to really downplay and regain control of the situation. As you know, basically, when it came out, he really did know. It hurt his campaign so badly that he resigned rather than have to go through an election where he would lose, or the possibility of him being impeached. And he just resigned. And that's one of the main reasons we know Nixon nowadays, is because he did resign from office due to the Watergate scandal. So when we're talking about ethics regarding his speech, he really is attempting to mislead people because he wants to reinvent the narrative. It makes him and his administration look better if he can somehow convince everybody that he was really not part of this, that he's above this, it was other people, he doesn't condone it. And he might not have condoned it, but the fact is, he really tried to basically shine everything away from him. And it turns out, he could have done a lot to prevent things from spiraling out of control as much as they did. He didn't. And it made him and everybody in his administration just look terrible. When it comes to Ken Lay, like I said, this is part of a 10 video series that was cut from a very long speech he did. Basically, the Enron Corporation scandal, if you're not familiar, Enron was a huge energy company. And in the 90s, very well known. Everyone called them, they were the smartest guys in the room. They were just making money left and right. They were doing all sorts of amazing worldwide deals. And it turns out they were using some very magical accounting to make themselves look as profitable and successful as they were. They had a lot of bad debt that they covered up. They got their accountants to play with the books, so that shareholders wouldn't find out, start selling out their shares and losing control of the corporation. When this speech is being given, the president, Jeffrey Skilling, has already resigned just a couple of days before this. And Ken Lay is in a precarious position because all of his employees, basically, as part of their benefits, have been given stock in the company. He needs to keep them from selling their stock because right now, if they all start selling their stock, if they don't start feeling super comfortable with the company, that's just going to lead them further and further down the debt rabbit hole. And he can't have that. He also can't help people. He can't have people within the company start feeling negative and just start bailing. So even though this is a company meeting and he's giving kind of an annual report, here's the state of the company, he does admit, yeah, we're being investigated in California. We've got this issue going on in India. We've got a lot of things going on. Yes, the president did just resign. We have all of this under control. And it is absolutely not what you're hearing about. All these rumors swirling around that we really don't have all this money, that, creative accounting has happened. This is not true. And you've just seen part of the video where you can really hear him talking about downplaying the low stock price at that time. Stocks had really dropped dramatically because shareholders were starting to feel like, what, I'm smelling lots of rats here. I'm going to start selling. Not enough to really tank them, but enough where they really would have to reorganize. And they were already in debt to start with. So this is not good. Plus, if it turns out they're found out, they face so many criminal charges for fraud, basically. So he's trying to get his employees, one, to stay with Enron, two, to keep their stock, and three, not listen to any of the rumors going around, even though some of those rumors are correct. When we're talking about ethics, this whole 10 video series, I think he talked for like 2 hours, so they've cut it up into significant pieces. But it's really interesting because, he's going up talking, doing like I'm one of you kind of a guy. He's very conversational. He's making it seem like you can trust me. I've been around with this company such a long time. We've been successful, right? Just because we're over this weird little hump right now doesn't mean we're always going to be that way. We've got steps in place where we're going to clear things up. Our stock, is down, but we've got measures in place where we're going to bring it right back up. And you can hear in that portion, he really is trying to get people, to believe the idea that it's not in their best interest to sell the stock for their own personal benefit. Helps them, helps the company. And just a few months after this speech was given, the whole company went belly up. And everybody who owned stock, a great deal of their retirement was put into Enron stock. They had nothing. They basically were leaving the building with their offices and boxes going, I've lost my job and a huge part of my retirement is now out the window. So he definitely did not have his employees' best interests at heart when he gave this speech. And this kind of points to the fact that when we're talking about ethics in public speaking, it's such a multifaceted issue. You have to do what's right for the company. Absolutely. You have to do what's right for yourself. Sure. But you also need to do what's right for your audience, and you need to do what's right for the general public. And a lot of times the interests of all these different groups are not the same interests. So we're going to jump onto that a little bit coming up in a couple of slides, but I just wanted you to see, here are some examples of actual public speakers who really were not very ethical. And you see what happened to them at the very end. I'm not saying this happens in every case. Some people do get away with things all the time, but we do especially remember those who, misapported information in an attempt to save themselves or save their party, save their company. And it just blew up on everybody. So we're going to move here. One of the parts I really want to reemphasize from the chapter is the section on plagiarism. As you are university students, plagiarism is a big deal. And I think, gosh, every course you must take must have a little bit where you talk about the problems of plagiarism and what can happen to you if you plagiarize. Now, these bullet points are from your book, but these are particularly interesting when it comes to your writing your speeches. So I want you to be aware of this when you start writing your own speeches. This is all considered plagiarism. One, turning in someone else's work as your own. So if you watch a video of a guy who gives an informative speech and you're like, I don't have time to really write my own speech, but that guy did, and it's pretty good. I think he probably got a good grade on it. I'm just going to kind of copy. No, don't do that. Some sites will allow you to share outlines and things like that. And you might be like, ooh, I really don't have time. I've got so much else going on. It's just so much easier for me to pull this other outline and then practice it. First of all, we will find it. Professors have ways. And secondly, you're stealing. And two, you're just, you're not learning from that. And that's the whole point. You're wasting money for this course if you're not going to do the work. So that's a big problem. Copying words or ideas from somewhere else without giving credit. We always cite our sources throughout speeches. Anything that doesn't actually come from your own thoughts and brain must be cited. And I will say this a million times during this course because it's important. If you have a fact from the American Medical Association, or if you find some interesting information or opinions from a certain website and you'd like to include that in your speech, that's great. You have to say where it came from. It's kind of interesting. A lot of times students will start giving a speech and they'll just start throwing out statistics without citing where they got the information from. And it comes off like, here I am, this experienced speaker. I have all of these statistics in my brain, right at my fingertips. No, you got that information from somewhere else. You didn't do that research. You need to say where it came from. Giving incorrect information about the source of a quotation. And sometimes it can be mistake. And sometimes you can be like, ugh, I don't want to say where this came from because it's going to not, help me with my case. Sometimes you'll find a really cool statistic and then you find out it was put out by someone who's not reputable or is not going to help you with your whole, the point you're making. And you might be like, if I say this came from there, no one's going to believe me. It's going to hurt my credibility, especially my derived and my terminal credibility, as you've probably read in the chapter. I have had certain people try to do that. It's weird. I can catch it, but I just put the real source out there. And then a lot of times people will read something online or they'll hear a quote and it'll be misattributed and they'll think, oh, that's a really good quote. I should put this in here. A lot of things are attributed to Marilyn Monroe, Albert Einstein, and Abraham Lincoln. They're not. If you hear a good quote, go on the internet and look it up, but make sure you check like a really good source of information. So many things have been attributed to Abraham Lincoln and Albert Einstein. That quote, you can't have me at my best if you can't handle me at my worst. Marilyn Monroe, she didn't say that, but everybody thinks she did. So it just it's a form of plagiarism. Even if you mistake it, you're not doing the right thing. Changing words, but copying a source's sentence structure without giving credit. Once again, credit is important. You're basically attempting to say that this is your work when it's really not. Using so many words or ideas from a source that it takes up the majority of your work, whether you give credit or not. Students try to do this a lot. You'll find some really good paragraphs of things that you're like, oh, this is my whole argument right here in this one guy's paper. How awesome is that? Or in this one article. So all the ideas come from this one source. And basically the argument is this guy's. You're basically taking that guy's work and purporting it to your own. You can be like, well, I agree completely with it. Yeah, but that's his work. Write your own argument. Even if you share some of the same ideas, make your own examples, put your own thoughts into it. Find other sources that you can use to build up your argument. Don't just take one guy's stuff and be like, this guy says it all for me. I'm just going to put that in my speech and it'll sound like it comes from me because I agree with it, but it's all his work. Don't do that. All right. Remember I said we would talk about ethical conundrums. Well, here is that part. When we talk about ethics and public speaking, if you read the chapter, they make it seem very cut and dry. Like the thing you should do is always tell the truth and be fair to all parties. Doesn't that sound awesome? It does. Who doesn't want to do that? However, when you work for, it doesn't matter if it's a government or a corporate body or a non-for-profit, you have a lot of people you have to make happy. One, you have to make yourself happy. That's awesome. I've been doing a lot of this lately, haven't I? Too much, maybe. You have to make your bosses happy. You have to make your shareholders or your donors happy if you work for a non-for-profit. You have to make the citizens happy if you work for a state government or a federal government. And you have to make whoever audience you're speaking to at that time happy. There's a lot of people you have to make happy. And sometimes not everybody's going to be happy. You have to decide who it's best to be honest and fair to in a lot of cases. And it's hard work. This is why public relations and related careers, you really have to be knowledgeable and have special skills there if you want to do well in the field, because these are experiences that will build your knowledge and help you to know, okay, in this kind of situation, I have to go through all of these issues to figure out what I want to say, how I want to say it. Do I want to say it at all? Do I kick it down the road? Do I jump on it now? If I say it, is there something else I can add that'll cushion the blow? Can I only mention part of it? Maybe that's something I can do. These are all things that you will learn with experience. And it's why PR is a specialized career as it is. First ethical conundrum example. Let's see this. Okay. You're a PR specialist, for a large corporation that manufactures medications. You have learned that one of your top selling medicines recently was found to have a newly discovered side effect. It can increase a patient's risk of developing liver cancer. This fact has not yet really become public. And at an event where you're speaking about a different drug, you're giving an altogether different kind of speech. At the end, sometimes you do Q&A, and you might say, does anyone have any questions? And there's always some guy who will pop up. Someone who has heard about the new side effect asks you to comment on it. Sometimes this will be a journalist. They're paid to kind of know these side things, these rumors that pop up. What do you do? Okay, so let's think about this. This is not good that our top selling medication has a new side effect that can be detrimental to people, increasing their risk of developing liver cancer. Maybe this medication, has nothing to do with the liver, or maybe it does. If you're already suffering from something else, also getting cancer is really bad. Getting cancer of any kind is just bad for any reason. So what do? You might think, well, if this is a speech that is going to go out and a lot of people are going to hear it, and it will be, especially if you're working for this large corporation, it doesn't matter who you're speaking to, this journalist is going to share it with the world. So basically, just know the world will hear what you say. The fair thing for everybody, since you know about it, would be to tell people. You would think, right? People should know if they take this medication, this new discovery was found that there's a side effect, it can increase a patient's risk of developing liver cancer. That's fair to everybody, the world. So it's in everybody's best interest to know this, right? Is it in your company's best interest to talk about it at this point in time? Is it in their best interest to be just so blanket about it? Yes, I can vouch for what you've said. This is actually something we have learned about. This new medicine has a side effect, and it can increase a patient's risk of developing liver cancer. Is that in your company's best interest or the shareholders' best interest? Well, this is negative news. Negative news always drives sales down, drives revenues down. That's not good for your company. Is this a risk your company is willing to take? You all are not old enough probably to know this. Back in the 80s, when I was a teenager, Tylenol had a problem with their medicines. They didn't have those caps with the covers on them, I mean, you had the cap, but then now there's like a paper thing that prevents you from kind of getting the pills out. They didn't do that back then, and somebody was tampering with them, and people were taking Tylenol that had been tampered with and were getting very sick. And I think a couple of people died from taking bad Tylenol. The Tylenol people basically went public with this and said, yes, we know this is happening. We are developing ways to prevent this from happening again. We have pulled all the Tylenol that were in that batch from shelves. We are going to take a bath on this, but we know that health is more important. So they developed this strategy for how they were going to deal with it. And while, yes, they lost a bunch of money in the short term, people really appreciated Tylenol coming forward and having this sort of communication where they said, yes, we know this has happened. We're going to take all responsibility for it. We're going to take a bath on it. But you'll know going forward that safety is our number one priority. Not every company is like Tylenol. So you would have to know from your bosses, what sorts of things are they going to be willing to be honest about at this point in time? And I'll tell you, the time to be deciding whether or not you're going to speak is not at this speech. The time to figure out what you're going to say is when you first learned about the side effect. If you go right to your boss and you're like, okay, we've learned about the side effect. What are we going to do? We need to have strategies for A, if we're just going to be open with it. And a lot of times that's not exactly what happens. A lot of times, let's get some research on this. Let's make sure this is a real thing. Let's make sure this isn't like research that, is it research that can be counted on, or is this research that's just going to come and go like so many other studies are? Sometimes they'll try to kick it down the field a little bit, to give them more time to think about how they're going to handle it. Maybe your plan B is that you figure out a way to acknowledge, but give yourself a little extra time. And a little extra time is always a valuable thing in the PR world. And in fact, that's probably in the real world what you would have to do. If you had time ahead of time, so you could develop these plan A and plan B kind of scenarios, you would know, okay, acknowledge, actually, we just learned about this new side effect of our top selling medication. We are reviewing the information that's presented to us and evaluating next steps. So while I do acknowledge, yes, you're being truthful, we are taking steps right now to figure out what we should do going forward. So you're being honest, you're being purposefully vague though, and you have to decide, is that ethical or is it not? It may not be the most ethical thing, but you're not lying. And it will better serve your shareholders and your bosses than just basically coming out and saying, yes, we know this, we heard this the other day, and we're figuring out what to do next. The way you say some things sometimes can help. Now, you're still probably going to have some negative feedback, even from just admitting the truth. Um, people are going to be like, oh my goodness, this medicine causes cancer. No, that's not what we said. We said, and you'll have to be very specific with how you say it, that this side effect can increase a patient's risk of developing liver cancer. From the information we received, it does not do so in everybody. But like I said, going forward, we have to develop new strategies for how we're going to deal with this issue that we just learned about. You might have bosses, though, who basically come out to you and go, no, say nothing, no comment it. We're gonna punt this, or we're working on some other side stuff at the moment. Maybe we have a new evaluation of this medication, and or a new formulation for this medication, or maybe we've got something else we're working on. Maybe we're going to drop it and pick up something else. Don't say anything. And so you have to, if this guy asks a question, if I want to keep my job, I have to do what my bosses say. Is that right? I can basically lie and say, no, we don't know anything about a side effect, which is a big lie. And that's not ethical at all. That's not ethical at all. Or you can say, we have no comment at this time, which honestly is just as bad as if you would have made up information. Anytime somebody says no comment, you usually know they're hiding something. It's the big give, the big tell for somebody who really just does not want to be saying something. So they will know something's up, and the media will then jump on it until somebody comes forward, probably you, to give out some information that they have poured over and decided how they're going to word it exactly. So you can do what your bosses say, but a lot of times it can cause problems too. So we go from this whole scale of responses to, for one, just being completely baldly and boldly honest, which can get you in trouble with your bosses and could be problematic for your job. Or you can be completely and baldly and boldly lie. No, we don't know anything about this, knowing that it'll come out eventually, but by that time, hopefully you'll have a way to respond. That is a big no. Basically, for the audience, you're basically not doing any good to the public. There probably are people taking that medication right then who have an elevated risk of liver cancer anyway. And if you say, no, this is perfectly fine, we don't know any side effect like that, they'll keep taking it. And if they get even sicker because they develop liver cancer later, you're involved in that. So all of this to show that when we talk about ethics and public speaking, there are so many different ways you have to think about it. What do you say? Who do you say it to? Who are you beholden to? Are you beholden to your bosses in your company? Are you beholden to the people out there in the public who really need good, clear, honest information? A lot of times, what you say will benefit some of the audiences, but not everybody. And that's just part of PR. It's crazy. Let's look at another ethical conundrum. Okay, this one is a little more interesting and straightforward because we see this happen a lot. You're a state representative for your district. Cool, congratulations. Another state representative who's from your party and from a neighboring district asks you to give a speech on his behalf to help in his run for re-election. However, this other representative is currently being investigated for embezzling funds from his campaign accounts. And you know for a fact that he did indeed do it. You know, people in the party, word gets out, you know, it happened. Everyone's like, we're just trying to basically contain right now. What do you do? So you have to decide, one, are you going to give the speech? I can just not give the speech. And then I don't have to worry about saying anything unethical. But you know, you become known then as being not a player in the whole party system, the whole re-election system. Politics is very much a you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of a system. And if you're not willing to step in for others, they will not be willing to step in for you. Now, you might be like, well, it's just that guy. I will give a speech to anybody who I think is ethically above board and hasn't committed an actual crime and isn't under investigation. And that is absolutely something you could do, but it still kind of gives you a weird reputation amongst the party because there are a lot of people nowadays who have this idea that when you're a party player, it doesn't matter what people do, you always stand up for the party, even if it's unethical. There's a lot of unethical people out there who really don't care about the truth. They care about winning. And if you're not helping them win, you're helping them lose. And that's a problem. So you have to think, okay, how is this going to make me look if I don't give this speech? Let's say nobody finds out about this. Let's say he gets out of it somehow and I don't give this speech and it looks like I'm just difficult. Is that a problem for me? Am I willing to take that risk? So maybe you think, well, maybe I should give the speech, but I'm going to make it vague. I'm not going to mention that. People don't have to know. But I'm just going to be like, he is definitely a representative. He's from my party. I want my party to have the most seats in government so we can maintain power. It's important that you vote for him. So you may be very vague about things, and maybe your goal isn't so much, you know, to tell people the truth about things, which you have to decide the ethics of that. But you want to keep your party in power because if they're not in power, there's a lot of things you can't do. You lose a lot of control of the state, and that's a problem in and of itself. So sometimes party politics is where it doesn't matter what people individually do, as long as collectively they maintain control. That's the only thing that matters. You have to decide, are you okay with that kind of thinking? So maybe you'll be like, okay, I'll help him get reelected, but I'm not going to specifically mention this. And if anyone asks me specifically about it, I will just be like, no comment it. You know, in that case, you know, politicians no comment a lot, which means I kind of know, but I'm not going to tell you. And you think, okay, I can get around with that. Maybe you feel like I'm a super honest person and I really should go out there and say, don't vote for this guy. I know for a fact that he embezzled and that's a problem. Then you're probably not going to get reelected because everybody in your party is going to come right against you. So that's probably not even an option. So you have to think about a lot of things from an ethical perspective if you're going to give speeches for a living, like a politician does. If you don't give a speech for that guy, he's probably not going to give one for you. You're not going to have all of this togetherness, which people really like. That's a problem. So giving this vague, you know, blah speech where we basically talk about we're all united together to take control, that can work. But then later, let's say this guy actually gets arrested for embezzlement of funds, or he faces charges, and then people come to you and say, okay, when did you know about this? Did you know about it when you vouched for him and encouraged people to vote for him in this upcoming reelection? You can lie, I guess, because who would know? And I think that's what a lot of people do. If they're trying to get reelected themselves, I knew nothing about this, and you can't prove that I knew it. Or if you actually admit it, okay, there was word going around, and but was it factual from my end? Now you're lying again, because remember from our little account, for a fact, people really do think he did it. You basically don't know what is in the future. We can't tell. So sometimes being vague or lying can come around to bite you in the backside. And then you have to think about ethically, what are you going to say at that point? You will hear from people, including your mom, that telling the truth is always the best course. And it can be, but you have to be willing to lose sometimes. You have to be willing to, you stand up for your principles, awesome. But sometimes that means you don't get reelected. Sometimes it means you might lose your job. Sometimes it means you lose people in your life, or you lose support from other people in your life. Because they don't see that you're a team player. You're not with them. You caused them to have difficulty because you told the truth. These are all things that people have to think about when they have careers that involve public speaking and ethics becomes a thing. So even though reading this information in our book may make it seem like ethics is a very, always be honest, always be fair, there's so much else to think about. If you have any conundrums that you're curious about and you'd like to have my opinion on them, send me an email. Awesome. I wish we could have small group forums with this remote class where you all could talk about them, because it can get really interesting. But, we have so much other work going on. I just want you to be aware that even though for our class, I know you're mostly not going to be faced with too many ethical conundrums, apart from plagiarism, which we do not stand for. When you enter the working world, ethics is something you absolutely will be thinking about quite a bit. All right, so this week, what are we doing? Your annual bag speech is due on Friday, just before midnight on Saturday. So Friday, 11:59 p.m., that assignment goes closed. You really can turn it in anytime this week, but just, and I ask this a million times, do not wait until Friday afternoon to start trying to record your speech, because when you try to throw things together, it's going to make you more nervous and anxious because you have such limited time. It's just going to put more pressure on you. And then you're going to turn in something that's not as good as it could be. So work on it through the week. Get it recorded. Take a look at it, record it as many times as you need to for you to feel good about it. Don't worry if you mess up in the middle of it and it's so bad you're like, ugh, do I want to do this again? No. Am I going to do this again? Yes. I do that all the time. Whenever I record videos, whenever I do audio recording, all sorts of things, I do so many takes. If you're a journalist and you ever have a chance to watch a journalist, they'll be out in the field, giving their stand-ups. They do them a million times. They're good at them. So you can see, hey, that person's pretty good. Maybe they only have to do it 4 or 5 times. Sometimes though, things are hard to say, or your background is weird, and you'll just do them again and again and again and again and again till you get one that you're like, okay, that's a good one. So don't feel bad if you have to do it a million times. If you have to do it a million times and you're like, you know what, this is getting me nowhere, I need to take a break, go have a snack, come back to it later, do it then. But remember, one take is all you get. If I see any edits or cuts in it, that's bad. Read chapter 4 for next week. And before we go, I'm just going to talk about a little bit about the any old bag speech, just some things I want you to remember. The instructions are all with the assignment, but just to review, you're going to upload the video of your speech, yourself giving your speech, to your YouTube channel. I have not heard from anybody that they don't know how to do a YouTube channel, so I haven't made an extra video on that. If you don't know how to put together a YouTube channel and you're not sure you can do it yourself, now is the time to email me and say, hey, can you help me? Do not wait until Thursday night, because I'll just be like, um, you know, let me know as soon as possible. We'll get you set up. You're going to upload your video to the YouTube channel. You're going to take the link for that video. You're going to copy and paste it into a Word document. And all this information is indeed in your assignment. And you're going to turn that Word document in online by the deadline. So it's not like you're going to upload the actual video to our class page. You're going to put the link in a document and email me that document through our class page. All right. A couple of extra things. Hopefully you have watched the examples I put down for the any old bag speech. If you have not, go watch them. They are in the assignment as well. A couple of links in there. It'll give you a really good idea of what we're looking for. But I just want to make sure, remember, let's see, if I'm doing a speech and here I am in my home, let's say I've decided I'm going to sit, make sure that my composition is good. I want to see my whole head. If you're sitting, head and shoulders shot is good. I can be in the center, but a lot of times if you want to show something off, making yourself a little to the side so you can hold up something to balance you out. This is my any old bag. So if I were doing my any old bag speech, this would be my bag. This is my work bag. I'm a professional PR person and professor, but whenever I'm out in the field, I'm always in construction sites, and this is way better than a briefcase. So if I were showing something off, remember, I want to make things composed. I want you to be able to see my bag. I don't want to like hold it up and be like, see, this is my bag. This is my backpack that I take with me to construction sites. Hold it up. Make sure it can be seen in the camera. Once again, I want you to talk to your camera. See, I'm looking at right here as if it were a person. That doesn't mean you just stare at the whole time, because you wouldn't do this when you're talking to your friends or to a teacher or to anybody. You're going to be very natural about it. You want to keep eye contact, but if you're referencing what you're talking to, you can certainly look at it. And so if I were taking an item out, this is from my present. One item I want to show you is some headphones. One, I want you to hold them up so we can see what they are. The reason why this is an item for my present is I have recently started my own podcast. It's called And Now for the Positive News. I put out episodes every Friday. And the reason why the podcast and these headphones are so important to me is I started my career with 12 years in broadcast journalism. I followed it up with about 15 years of marketing and public relations and professorship. But I really lately wanted to get back to some of my broadcast journalism roots, and I love listening to podcasts. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to create my own, and it's based on good, happy, motivational, positive news stories. So it's a current events podcast focused on good news, and I'm having just the best time putting it together. I use these headphones when I'm producing and recording my podcast, and it's just one of the most fun things I've done in such a long time. So you want to make sure you're holding things up, and you want to make sure you explain the item. But remember, eye contact. You saw I could look at it, but then I look back to you, which is this camera. And then if I want to get something else, so here's my bag again, and I pull something else out and to the end. So that's basically what you're going to be doing, except 5 to 7 times with your items. Make sure you time your video. And I've seen all the tricks. If you know that you're going to go short and you really pad out the beginning of your video and you pad out the end so that it looks longer than it is, I'm going to go with strictly whatever the real content of your video is. So I'm not just going to look at, oh, this video is 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. It fits. I'm going to just see exactly what in there actually is your speech. And then don't try to pad it with a lot of nonsense sentences, And so I conclude my video of my items in my any old bag. I hope you enjoyed hearing about all of the items in my any old bag as much as I enjoyed putting all the items into my any old, just padding it out nonsensically just to fill time. Don't do that. But also don't go too long. You know, I've got to grade all these things. They take a long time. But I will be posting links to some of the ones that I think are truly awesome so that you can share all the goodness with your fellow classmates. And I hope we have so many options for the great speeches. I just basically put everybody's up because they're all so good. All right, I'm really looking forward to getting your annual bag speeches. And if you have any questions, any concerns, any questions, again, questions and more questions, don't forget to email me. I check every day and I really want all of us to succeed. So have a great week and I'll see you next time. And probably I'll be doing a lot more of this. See? Bye.